Thank you for being here as we're finally able to resume our journey toward accountability, transparency, and reform. I want to recognize some of the folks who are joining us this morning. Rick Williams, Jeffrey Beaver, Davida Briscoe from our Inquest Review Committee, and also Andre and Dove Taylor, as well as, again, Davida from Not This Time. We're also joined by Dee Silv, who's the Inquest Review Program Manager at our Department of Executive Services. So we all know what's at the core of today's event. It's heartbreak. Every name on a case that will come before an inquest is the name of a person whose family misses them. A life ended too soon. The inquest seeks to establish the who, what, when, where, how, and why. And importantly in this new process, it seeks to establish what could be done, what could be changed to prevent this tragedy from repeating itself in the future. And that was a lot of what we're trying to get to in our inquest reform process. It was almost 3 years ago now. We set out to establish a new inquest process, one that would provide clarity and openness that we really need to have in the case of a police or other state-involved death. The clarity for families, the confidence for the public about how the power of the state is being wielded, the clarity and closure for law enforcement officers involved, for the agency involved, for the communities involved. But as you know, we face challenges. Challenges from those who wanted to stand in the way, those who wanted to block our vision to shine a light or to find answers for these families, for agencies, for a public that deserves the unvarnished truth. For 3 years, we have been fighting in court, fighting to move forward. And today, we are able to do just that. Earlier this month, after years of proceedings, we finally have resolution from the Washington State Supreme Court. After 3 years, on July 15th, we received a unanimous ruling allowing us to move forward. The executive order I will sign here in just a moment will set our course forward, a step toward closure and certainty, and hopefully soon, a small step toward being able to prevent the kinds of tragedies we've seen from repeating themselves in the future. My order will align our process with the court's ruling. And I want to just mention to you a couple, kind of the two main elements of the court's ruling that differ from the original order. First, per the court, the inquest jury is to determine whether the death was by, quote, criminal means. And second, the court says that officers or others may be compelled to testify at the inquest hearing. Those are the two main differences. But it also affirms the core of the work we did, which is to try to move beyond the simple question of who is this person, what happened that night, and to ask whether the training could have been different, and if the training was different, would we have avoided this tragedy, or whether that individual officer or other government official was trained right but acted incorrectly. Because when we know those things, we can go back to those agencies and we can say, you need to make changes. You need to change your training. You need to change the way you equip people. You need to change your hiring practices or your discipline practices. You need to figure out what could have been done to have had a different outcome in this case. So today we can resume that path. We can return to the path of reform. We can return to the path of accountability. We can turn to the path of clarity and closure for the families who've been so terribly impacted. You know, the folks who are gathered with us here today, each of them has gone through a terrible, traumatic time, and their families. And I want to thank them for the work that they did with us 3 years ago and the path they've walked with us to get to today, so that we can have a chance to align the conduct of government agencies with the expectations of the public here in the 21st century. And speaking on their behalf, it's my pleasure to introduce the Executive Director of Not This Time and also a member of our Inquest Review Committee, DeVita Briscoe.
Good morning. My name is DeVita Briscoe. I am the Executive Director of Not This Time. I am also a member of the Executive's Inquest Review Committee, and most importantly, I am the sister of Shay Taylor. When I lost my brother at the hands of police, my family opted to participate in the county's inquest process. We tried in good faith to participate with open minds during one of the most painful times in our lives and quickly realized the process wasn't fair or transparent. In fact, the experience added to our feelings of grief. We decided to act. We founded Not This Time, an organization that focuses on advocacy for families impacted by police violence. We asked Executive Constantine to work with families like us, the community, and members of law enforcement and the government to create a better, more meaningful process. In 2018, we stood in this building alongside the executive as he signed our recommendations and much-needed reforms into law. We knew there would be challenges, but we never thought we'd have to wait another 3 years for the process to go into effect. I want to be clear. Families who have lost their loved ones at the hands of the state deserve to know the facts and circumstances that lead to these tragedies. King County residents deserve a transparent and accountable process that illustrates how the death occurred and by what means. Elected officials deserve to know how these tragedies happened so that they can make informed policy decisions, and law enforcement leaders deserve to understand how policy and training was or wasn't observed in deadly force incidents like the one that killed my brother Shay. I'm proud to stand here today knowing that King County's inquest process will allow for all of those things to occur. We set out to deliver a more fair, transparent, and meaningful process for the families we represent. Because of the strong leadership and partnership from Executive Constantine and his office and the tireless advocacy of the families that we have supported, we have delivered on that promise. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm pleased now to invite you to join with me as we sign the new executive order for inquests. And now we'd be able to take any questions you might have. Yes.
Mike Carter with the Times. Now that you assigned this in and reported the county's policies with ruling, how long do you think it will take for the inquest to get up and running? I know you've had this, you've had an organization in place since 2018. So how soon do you think we can have inquests starting? And how many are we going to have? We've got 40 plus cases out there.
So 6 inquests have been ordered and been pending. There are 16 more that are ready to be ordered, and the staff has been working to prepare these cases. And we have Dee Silv, who's the inquest program manager for the program, to tell you a little bit more about the timeline for getting the inquests underway.
Good afternoon. We are actually ready to go. So as soon as we are available to open up safely, we are definitely ready to go. While we were on the stay, we have been working diligently with all the cases that we have and all the some of the backlog that we're working on.
have parties been trading documents, doing discovery, the sort of things that you expect to see that will allow these cases to actually have inquest trials or inquest proceedings within weeks, months, do you think?
So trading documents to the parties, no, we weren't really allowed to, but we're actually ready to go and to do that actual process. So the cases that we do have, we are moving forward with them.
Again, a rough estimate on when we might see our first inquest.
As soon as we're ready to open up, as soon as we're ready to have a courtroom, Zoom, we're ready. We are ready. And that's getting the parties all together with their schedules and moving forward with it.
As a practical matter, is that more weeks, more months, 4 or 5 months? What do you think?
It just depends. We have a lot of work to do as far as getting all the parties together on one page with their schedules, with the attorneys. So as fast as that can take, we are ready to open. But as far as the inquest program itself, with our administrators and with our inquest attorneys and with myself, we are ready to go, to move forward.
Will you be doing 3 at a time? You have 3 administrators. Will there
Yes.
be potentially 3 inquests running at any given time? It's
Yes.
going to catch up on the backlog.
Yes. The question was, will there be potentially 3 at a time? And the answer is yes, there will be.
A question for the executive.
Yes.
Law enforcement is certainly concerned about these changes. As you see it, how is this fair to the law enforcement officers who've been involved in a killing?
Well, first of all, the Supreme Court ruling differs from our original order, and I recognize that. It does not in any way change the officer's constitutional rights, of course. And I believe that our officers broadly want clarity about what happened. We believe that in some cases it will show that the officers acted consistent with their training and department policies. In other cases, it may show that their actions differed from that training and policy. But in either case, the outcomes will allow us to potentially change the training and policy in order that we might avoid the situations in the future. I am very well aware that officers may be concerned about the way in which these inquests may play out. But I will remind you again that they have all the constitutional protections and that this is designed to be a fair and objective process to find out what happened in any particular incident. And I will also, Essex, this may not often come up, but this applies to more than police. It can apply to the detention function of the government or other functions where people die either because of an action or a failure to act by a government agent.
But in the past, officers were not compelled to testify, and juries were not required to decide whether there were criminal means.
The officers' rights against self-incrimination are unchanged. The Constitution cannot be overridden by state law or by a county executive's order. So that is no different than in the past.
Executive Constantine, I'm sure you are aware of the gun-related homicides over the past few days in Seattle and another one in SeaTac. First of all, what are your thoughts on what's going on here? And is there any immediate stopgap or plan to deal with all of this gun violence from county leaders?
Yeah. So first of all, the upsurge in gun violence in our community is very much in parallel with what's going on across the nation right now, and I do not have a good explanation for why there is a sudden uptick in gun violence nationally. But I will tell you that we are, in our gun violence prevention initiative, actually working to put people on the streets in communities that are the most impacted by gun violence, not only police officers, but also folks from agencies that can intervene, understand the tensions that are happening in a community, seek to unwind them, to identify those who may be victimized by gun violence or may be more likely to commit gun violence, and attempt to lower the temperature so that we avoid some of what we're seeing on our streets right now. It is absolutely, utterly unacceptable to me, and should be to anyone, that we have this level of violence happening in our communities, and the prevalence of guns in the hands of those who are not exercising good judgment is something that has to be taken extremely seriously.
What are county leaders then doing this week, this summer, about the gun violence? Is there a specific plan,
Yes.
some type of stuff? Yeah.
Yes.
What can you
So-
want to tell neighbors?
You may have seen the announcement last week that Seattle is joining our gun violence initiative with a couple $1 million investment. That initiative includes the deployment of teams onto streets and communities to essentially be a positive presence. They call it positive loitering, to be able to get to know the people who are in communities, to understand where the beefs may be or the tensions may be happening, to find a way to stop the shootings before they happen. And that is actively happening right now in communities around the county. We want more of that, and we have to build the capacity to do it. Law enforcement is often able to respond after the fact, but we are not willing to be satisfied with people being chased down after a shooting happens. We want to try to understand where the violence may happen and to intervene to stop it.
Even with these programs in place, though, the shootings keep happening.
Right.
How come?
Right. Well, that is the challenge that we're taking on. And whether it's in the city of Seattle, in another of our 38 cities in unincorporated King County, or in communities all across the country, we are seeing the results of an extraordinary number of guns in the hands of those who are not responsible, not acting responsibly, and people are acting out violently, and we just got to put a stop to it.
So I have a question for Mr. Williams, but you would come to the microphone.
Would you like to answer a question? Would you like to answer his question? He wants to ask you a question.
I'm Essex Porter from Cairo 7. We met many years ago.
Hey, Essex, take your mask off.
I'm Essex Porter from Cairo 7. We met many years ago. Would you share your feelings and your hopes about what will now happen to in inquest situations? You didn't have the benefit of this. How do you hope this will help others?
When they asked me to join this, I thought, what an opportunity to do this for the citizens, someone like me or any other family that's gone through this, that I was optimistic that I wanted to do this and to see the changes, that it's a must. I keep in my heart prayers that it'll work, the changes, because it took a lot out of us for what we've been through, what we lived through. I keep my prayers and my heart open that the changes will step up.
Thank you. That was great. All right, folks. Thank you so very much for being here this morning. I am too optimistic that this will be the beginning of changes that will have the actions of not just law enforcement, but all of government move closer to the expectations of the residents of our county in 2021. And again, to the families who, through their pain, have participated in this process and then stood in there with us for 3 long years of litigation, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much. Take care.